The global insurance industry is more than a market.
It's a movement powered by 3 million professionals around the world.
Together, we support communities as they rebuild after disaster.
Help businesses through risk and uncertainty.
Protect individuals as they plan for brighter futures.
This impact isn't possible without people.
That's why we attract, grow, and retain the very best talent.
Because when every voice is heard,
when every person feels they belong,
we don't just build careers.
We build a better tomorrow.
Belonging builds 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 tomorrow.
Good afternoon from London. Welcome to everybody in the room in the Allied World office in London. We're delighted to host everybody here today. Mike Walsh is my name, and welcome to everybody that's coming in online as well. We're very proud to be associated with the with this event today, Surviving to Thriving. We've got an excellent panel, and we have a fantastic facilitator. Alison Phillips is our facilitator today. She's a seasoned British journalist and media consultant who served as editor-in-chief of the Mirror from 2018 to 2024. She's a board member of the Society of Editors, former chair of Women in Journalism, and a trustee of the National Trust. Alison is now a senior advisor at MHB Group and continues to contribute to national media outlets. Just before I hand the mic to Alison, I just want for everybody in the room, we're not expecting a fire drill, but just in the case that we do have a fire drill, the muster point is at Monument Street, so by Monument Underground Station. And if that were to happen, we would like all guests to report there so we can make sure that you're all safely accounted for. Alison, over to you.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, Mike, and thank you very much, everybody at Allied World, for having us here today. So first, I want to thank you because we have people joining us from all over the world, which is quite incredible, as well as the people we have here in London for this, the whole of the Dive In Festival, particularly for this event, where we're going to be talking about from surviving to thriving, the impact of domestic abuse on career advancement. And when I say thank you for attending this event, I know everybody always says thank you for attending an event at the beginning of an event, but I actually mean thank you to you and your industry, because I think you need to be very aware there are very few industries globally and nationally in this country that are looking at this issue of domestic abuse and the impact it can have on people's careers. And so you should sort of take a brief moment of congratulation to think we're talking about it, and then the rest of the session you can think about what more we're going to do about it and how we're going to take it forward. So, but it's a credit to your industry that this conversation is taking place. I think, because even just using National Office statistics, which we know underestimate the scale of domestic abuse. I'm just talking about in the UK at this point. But in the year to March 2024, there were 2.3 million experiences of domestic abuse for people over the age of 16. And remember, those statistics will be underestimated. So my glasses are always falling up and down. Those statistics will be underestimating the scale of the problem. But of that number, we come down to just 38,000 convictions. So we know that somewhere between that 38,000 and the 2.3 million are all those people who are getting up in the morning, trying to go to work, trying to run their lives, trying to look after their families. And the point of today is to think about what we, or what you as an insurance industry, can do to be there to support those people. And to have that conversation, we have an amazing panel before us. I'm going to start at the furthest most end. where to all huge fans of 1990s TV, we have a star of London's Burning, Samantha Beckinsale, who is now somebody who's lived with the experience of domestic abuse and has turned that experience into a power for change. She is the inaugural patron of the Broxtowe Women's Project and has worked tirelessly to raise awareness around domestic abuse, around coercive control, even producing a docudrama on the topic called Love. So it's so good to have you here today. And then next to Samantha, we have Jo Browning, who is the Chief People Officer of Markle. So you've had, I think, a 20-year career at Markle, which is very, very impressive. But not only that, you have spent so much of that career really focused on trying to encourage diversity and inclusion within this industry and within your business. And that this now, domestic abuse and how we support people who are living with that are being supported by their employer. And we've got some amazing, I think, points that you'd like to bring forward from that. And then next to Jo, we have Sarah Brown, who, again, is somebody with lived experience of domestic abuse, but again, has used that experience to raise awareness about the issue, but also to support people currently going through that, and particularly in the workplace. She is the founder of We Thrive, which is an incredible organisation, which is a recruitment operation, but it's also particularly trying to encourage people who have been through an experience of domestic abuse and to support them back into the workplace. And as a result of that work, she was named Visionary Recruitment Leader of the Year 2025, and has received the Social Impact Innovation Award for 2025. She is also an ambassador for IDA, the Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse, and a domestic abuse champion within the Insurance Families Network. So I think insurance is an area that you know quite a lot about. And then next to Sarah, we have Susan Bright, who is the Chief Executive Officer of IDA. After a sort of a long career in law, in the legal profession, you took over this role in 2022, and this is a charity. IDA is a charity that represents, I think, 2,000 employers across the country who are thinking about how they can support their employers in domestic abuse. And I think your experience there about learning from other industries will be fascinating today. So that's who we've got in front of us. And just to make everybody clear what we're here for, just the purpose of today, 3 things: to better understand how domestic abuse impacts career advancement for employers. 2, we're going to look at what employers can do to offer real support. And 3, we're going to identify how people can navigate their professional journey after having experienced abuse. So that's the plan for today. And I think we're going to sort of start at the beginning, which I guess is sort of the diagnosis of the problem and the situation. Samantha, could you just sort of talk us through, to begin with, how someone's experience of domestic abuse can impact their career, their ability to focus, to perform, and to be sort of present in the workplace?
Well, I mean, there's an awful lot in that, and I will do my utmost to do that. But I think also, firstly, to kind of say, you know, what's a 90s has-been actress to do with the
90s now, not a 90s has
to do with the insurance industry. Well, it's a £100 billion business, the entertainment industry in the UK. I had to be insured for every job that I did. I also had my cars. The snazzier they got, the higher my insurance premium. I did actually pay higher house premiums in case Tom Cruise ever came to tea, and that was a genuine reason of why my premiums were higher. So actually we are connected, you know. So when my career ended, which bought me a 7-bedroomed house, that I'd worked from the age of 15 for, that I'd, you know, then you had to prove that you could actually do a job. And it is an industry, it is a proper job, it is a proper profession. You get your promotions and you get all the trappings with that. When that was sabotaged for me and I ended up homeless and for the first time in my life on benefits, it also ended for you. I can't pay any of my insurance policies anymore. So I'm just one little person, but you multiply us by the millions, we have a direct impact on you. Abusers have a direct impact on you by sabotaging our careers. There's also, we were talking a little earlier about social mobility. So my, now I don't like calling it, right, the person who abused me, who actually works in the financial service industry himself, and there was a conferred professional position of trust into his personal life, you know. Let me help you. Let me take control of your finances. Let me do this for you. You don't need an accountant. You don't need an advisor. I mean, I did a lot of it myself. I paid high tier tax, VAT registered, all of that kind of thing. Not only did I end up homeless and on benefits, I lost me. And I was trying to figure out how to describe what happens to you. And it's like a smashed mirror. So even now, sat here before you, I'm like a mirror that's been glued back together, but the picture's never going to quite be the same. The reflection's never going to be the same. You know, mine's a pretty cutthroat industry, and I got really quite high up the ladder. You don't do that by not knowing your business, by not knowing your value, by not being confident enough to in your skills and in your social network and building up all of that. And it went pretty much overnight. It dropped off a cliff. And how he did it, he didn't say to me, you can't work. It was emotional blackmail. It was the belittling on a constant basis, whilst he was living in the 4-bedroom detached house in Kent and living the lifestyle that my money had brought and that my job had brought. So what if I'm self-employed, but if I did, you know, I was, before we changed all the systems, I was an LWT girl, for those that remember LWT in the olden days. Now, and I worked for them a lot. Had I had the backing of an employer, I don't think I'd have completely left the industry. So it would have been easier for me to get back in. I can't now. It's there's too much has happened. My memory is affected. My health has been affected. I've lost body organs because of it. He never hit me, by the way. So I'm rebuilding, but I'm rebuilding, trying to marry my two passions, which is domestic abuse and how I used, you know, my previous career. But without the support of people like Ida and Sarah and Mark and events like this, I'd just be sat at home on the dole. So we are of value. We know what abusers do. We know how they do it. We know they're patterned, they're predictable. And if they're patterned and predictable, they're preventable. And they are costing you money just as much as they're costing us. You don't pay off our debts. You're paying off a perpetrator's debts that they've put in our name. My perpetrator used every kind of financial product going to destroy me, even ones that I didn't know. My car insurance. I didn't know that I got my car insurance. It was all legal and all the rest of it. But I didn't know that he'd fraudulently leased a car that I was driving. That I was the one that was driving around without insurance, risking criminal record, all the rest of it. And he was just enjoying the fact that he knew that and I didn't, because my insurance was completely invalid. So in terms of the everyday stuff, I mean, would you like me to drill down a little bit more into that? Or
I'm also sort of kind of, I think people would be quite interested in how this stuff's going on at home, but the impact that then tips into you trying to still do the job, and at what point you sort of think, I just can't manage all this.
Well, you're constantly risk assessing. The minute you leave the house, you know, if you've got children, if you've got animals, if you know, say you elderly parents, anything like that. But you're constantly risk assessing in what happens is your brain changes. So a lot of women, and a lot of the women in the room will get this. You know, we go out at night and we're constantly risk assessing. We know what to do. We know what we're checking for. You multiply that by like 150 times. By the time you get into the workplace, you're already exhausted. You're risk assessing if you're going to be a bit late. If your boss wants you to do something at the end of the day, that means you're not back on time and his dinner isn't on the table. If you know, if a friend asks you out, a work colleague asks you out. I mean, I didn't go to social events, even when I was at the job that he did allow me to do, even when we were filming. There is a social requirement. You know, there was a dinner with the director and the producer that I was supposed to go down and do. I didn't do it. So I'm that impacts my career because I'm seen as either a snooty whatever, or just difficult to work with. I've never been difficult to work with. That was actually my reputation of people enjoying working with me was important to me, and that's what gets you more jobs as well. So your whole social network, everything, but your brain is on constant alert. You haven't slept. You don't know what you're coming home to. So the idea that you can be relaxed, efficient, driven, focused in the workplace, and we try really, really hard, and we carry it off a lot of the time. But one of the things that you really lose is your mojo. You just lose who you are. You just lose your spark, your whatever it is that makes you you. So you know, there are really common factors around this, but one of the things I think as well that does actually get missed is that the National Police Chief Council, who say themselves it's an underestimation, that 1 in 20 adults are perpetrators of domestic abuse. My perpetrator works in your industry. Now that's 27 Wembley stadiums full of perpetrators, and we've only got 1 Wembley stadium worth of prison spaces. We're not going to prison or police our way out of it. We have to change our culture, and actually realizing that, you know, we have acquired skills that we've had to hone. We've been forced to hone because it either cost ours or our children's lives. Actually, they're a skill set that's really valuable to you. Lived experience is really, really valuable to you as an industry. And, you know, we're here to help you. That's why I'm here today, to help you to change the culture and to understand how you're just as involved in this as we are. And actually, it impacts you just as it impacts me.
And just one last question before we move on to Joe. There must be a point, perhaps, if you're in this sort of experience where your work colleagues or your boss or whoever are kind of like the last people you've got left, because if you've lost relationships with your friends or your family, they're the last people who might possibly be able to save you.
They absolutely are the last people, and that's the position that I ended up with. You know, my friends had gone, my family had gone, but I still had my agent, I still had my accountant, who was a friend as well. The sabotage, and it is sabotage, it's deliberate sabotage. That meant that I lost my agent. Once that happened, I was completely isolated, completely and utterly isolated. And like I say, if I'd still been, say, an LWT girl, I think, you know, from the publicity department to whoever, that support would have been there for me, and I wouldn't have got. I mean, it's really hard to come back once you've lost people. It's hard to, you know, you're losing value. And actually, when my career goes down the Swanee, it impacts so many other industries, not just the insurance industry, but everything from hairdressers to drivers to gyms to accountants, to add a sideline of property development, conveyancing lawyers, mortgage products. You know, I had a career, and all of those people no longer have my money. And like I say, I'm just one little whatever, but you multiply me by millions, and it's really, really impactful on our whole economy.
Thanks so much. One thing I should have mentioned earlier is that if you've got questions, which we'll be taking towards the end, there is a Slido thing that's going to miraculously bring them all up. So we've seen there how important employers can be trying to support and protect somebody. Let's just first come to, I think Susan and Joe both got some interesting points about this. Joe, do you want to speak first about the role of an employer and what best practice we could look for in this area? Should we try again? And of course, we're one employer within this industry, but very happy to share really our perspectives and where we got to where we are today. And it really started for us early last year. We sponsor the Markel Magnolia Cup at Goodwood. There's always a charity partner for that. My Sister's House was the charity last year, which is a small domestic abuse charity in Chichester. And we raised a ton of money and we did a toiletries drive. Great. But we had that little aha moment of going, we're doing that as a charity initiative. We're not doing anything within Markel. And then the second aha moment we had was when we started to investigate and we heard some of the statistics. Alison, you've quoted there, some there, but that 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men statistic of people who've been impacted at some stage in their lives. And again, we had that moment of, all right, so we're 1,200 people in the UK. You apply that statistic and you go, there are hundreds of people at Markel who might have been impacted. We have to do something. So it took us nearly a year. We wanted to do it properly. I think one of the main things that we realized very early on was we had no experience or expertise. We needed experts like Aida, like working with Sarah, and it went far beyond an HR policy. This is not something that you can slap a policy on. So we created a framework and it is multi-dimensional. And I guess the main thing that I would say is that we made sure that that was very personal and very tailored. So it's not a policy in the sense of you can have X number of days as you would with annual leave or something. We wanted something that was very tailored. So, you know, is it that it's an economic or financial impact? Right, let's give you access to an IFA. Is it that you need support in finding local services? Right, let's work with Women's Aid to do that. Is it that managers need support in being that sort of entry gateway? Let's train managers. HR, that was the biggest learning for us of actually making sure that our HR team was well trained to be able to put together that tailored plan. So we invested heavily with HR training. So we just tried to come at it from every angle, and particularly then for the career impact. And that's why we're very proud partnering with Sarah on the career return coaching and support to make sure that those people who have been impacted feel that they've got someone working with them to rebuild their careers. So multifaceted and trying to be as personal as possible. And have you had a positive response from people within the business that feel that that support is now there?
Yeah, the response was good straight off. I think that, well, there were a lot of people who shared their personal stories and said, oh, gosh, really pleased that you're doing that. I think with something like this, it's going to take years to build trust. That's something that we know is not going to happen easily. And also reassuring people about the confidentiality. So almost that double layer of confidentiality when it comes to disclosures. It's not like normal HR data. No. You know, even within HR, we are not going to be talking about this. This is not going to be a subject of conversation in the HR room. So yes, a good initial response, but I think it will take years. So we're not naive to think that, that our response is going to be perfect every time because we're going to learn as we go, but also it's going to take a lot of time.
So Susan, is that the crucial problem in that quite often if you are experiencing something like this yourself, the absolute last thing you might want to do is go to your boss and say, this is going on in my life?
Yes, absolutely. There is unfortunately still, I think, stigma attached with domestic abuse completely wrongly. But it's incredibly difficult for somebody to come forward and to share that with anybody. And also, one of the things that I've certainly learned is that there are a lot of people who don't actually realise that what they're experiencing is domestic abuse or even problematic. They may not be very happy, but the problem is it's often been normalised over a very long period of time. And Sam was talking a little bit about that, and people are nodding in the audience. I can see you. And so it may take a very long time for people actually to realise that they're experiencing domestic abuse, realise that they may need to seek support. However, what I would say is the work can be, with the right culture, a really wonderful place and a place of support. It may be the only place that someone can go, if it's a physical place, that they can go and feel safe and be away from, to some degree, the situation that they're facing. Unfortunately, though, domestic abuse can follow people into the workplace. People may work in the same place, or people may be contacted constantly, and there's always this fear, I need to get home, I need to deal with whatever. So it is really difficult for people to come forward. So the first thing is creating that workplace culture where people do feel able to seek support and help. And that takes time. Before I took on this role, I was the managing partner of the UK managing partner of a global law firm. And I led the introduction of the firm's domestic abuse policy a few years ago. And what I learned from that was it needs to come from the top. I needed to talk about this. I needed to make it really clear to everybody that this really mattered to us, that we did have a policy, but what was really important was that people would know what would happen to them if they came forward and sought help, that it would be kept confidential, the types of support that the organisation might be able to offer, although you're absolutely right, it has to be tailored to the individual. What one person needs might be very different from someone else. But what I can tell you is that having introduced that policy, people did start coming forward, men as well as women, needing that support and help, from the most junior people to the most senior. One of our most senior partners came forward to seek the support. I think that was a real aha moment for our organisation, because when I said I wanted to introduce the policy, some senior members of management said, why on earth do you want to do this, Susan? Nobody at our firm is going to be experiencing domestic abuse. What a load of rubbish. People are experiencing domestic abuse in every organisation. There'll be people in the room, and if you need to talk afterwards, because this is not an easy subject, please come and talk to us. And those on the line, if you need to step away at any point, please feel free. This is tough. But once we had introduced it, people did come forward. They did seek the support that the firm offered in a wide range of ways. And lots of people may not have come forward, but they will have used the information that we provided to seek support or to help other people. So during COVID, you may or may not know that the calls to domestic abuse hotlines absolutely shot up. So I think that's an indication that being confined to home for some people can be really dangerous.
And so when you've got 2,000 businesses signed up with IDA. So you got, when they first come to you, what are the sort of simple things that you think that they can, I mean, you talked about sort of a good culture, but beyond that, what are the things, the instant things you think, right, try this?
So we have, so it's free to join IDA. All our materials, all our events are free. And basically, we're a very small organisation, but we produce materials and everything that people can use to put in place a good workplace response to domestic abuse. And so we help people to understand that, first of all, you need to get that senior leadership buy-in, because like everything, if you don't start at the top, and it won't filter through into the organisation. We have a draft policies, we have guidelines for managers, we have a whole toolkit about how to introduce an effective workplace response. And so we encourage people really to go through the process that you're describing, which is to think, what's right for our organisation, what do we need to put in place to raise awareness amongst people that this is an issue? Who are people going to go and talk to? How do we raise awareness generally amongst everybody that this is an issue? Where do you go? So we encourage a framework which is the 3 R's. So how do you recognise domestic abuse? How do you respond appropriately? It's awfully important if somebody does tell you that they're believed, because it's a point of extreme vulnerability if somebody shares that. And to be faced with somebody saying, well, I can't possibly believe that he or she behaves like that. I mean, that's just devastating. And then finally, referring. What we're not suggesting that any employer should become an expert in domestic abuse. It's more about understanding, being able to provide support, and being able to refer people to the expert support they need.
And I can see, I mean, obviously that is incredible support to be offering to one of your people. But Jo, just want to come back on that, because I'm sure we've got some very big bosses listening in right now, or big bosses in the room. What's in it for the business?
Well, I mean, this is one of those areas where actually, you can make the business case for the importance of tackling this. So you put aside the fact that this is, there's a moral imperative to doing this and we should be doing it. If you need to prove the business case, it's what many of us did on D&I many years ago of, what's the business imperative for it in general. But if you think about lost productivity, absenteeism, being late for what, or that person is not reliable, all of the, the assumptions that then start to come along with dealing with a domestic abuse situation. It's not hard to put a financial number on that to be able to show the business imperative for that. I don't think you should have to do that. I think we should all be recognizing, again, as we're all sort of having those little aha moments of, gosh, this is more widespread and more pervasive than we think. We shouldn't need the business case, but that, most absolutely does, doesn't it?
I think, Susan, you'd like to come in on that point as well.
I think it is really important to, there's the moral case is obvious. I think the business case is really important too, because you're absolutely right. Thinking it costs the economy a massive amount of money. The estimate at the moment, and it is only an estimate obviously, is £88 billion a year. £88 billion a year. And that's through lost productivity, people taking time off work. That's also the cost in terms of court time and everything else. The cost to business is about 18 billion. There is, and I can dig this out later for people, there is a website where you can go to and calculate the individual cost for your business in terms of domestic abuse. But what you think about it, somebody's not performing, they might not be turning up. They may never tell you what the problem is. They may go through a performance review. They may lose their job. As an organisation, you've then got to recruit somebody else. That costs money. You've got to bring somebody else in, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a business issue. It's a performance issue. If somebody's dealing with all this stuff at home, how can they possibly be performing at their best at work? But if an organisation is able to help somebody through this, they will remain in the business, hopefully, they will perform well. The loyalty that will be engendered is massive. But I would say to employers, it's important to understand this isn't a one-off, help somebody for a month or so and then it's all done. This can be a long-term issue, particularly where people have children and maybe needing to deal with family court ongoing proceedings. We have a group of 14 ambassadors, individuals. Sarah is one, another one in the audience, Catherine, people with their own experience of domestic abuse, and it can be long term. We have one ambassador who has spent the last 7 years dealing with family court proceedings with his abuser, challenging over children and so forth. So there may be long periods of time when somebody's absolutely fine. We have another ambassador who was absolutely fine for 7 years until her former partner was let out of prison. At that point, there was a whole issue around safety, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a big business case. There really, really is. And that's something that I had to develop. We do also have a pro forma business case that people can take and use and adapt to their own organisation if you need to persuade senior management that this is what you need to do.
Thank you. And then, so we reached the point where a business is dealing or helping somebody that has got this as their lived experience. Then I think Sarah, this is where you come in slightly, and about thinking about what the career pathways for that person can be from that point onwards. What do you sort of recommend? How can someone's career pathway be aided at that point?
So I know from past experience, it's a lack of confidence that you have, and also the lack of engagement with employers and also with your team and your family and the social impact around that. So I've been working with Dr. Genevieve Groom, and we've built a Flying High program which supports domestic abuse survivors through a trauma-informed program to help build confidence and to allow them to actually be able to re-engage with life, friends, family, and more importantly, work colleagues and also their jobs, so that they can they're able to actually build a life again. Because as a survivor, you're generally existing. When you're going through domestic abuse, you're not actually thriving in life. Hence why I started We Thrive, to support survivors back into the workplace.
And then when somebody comes through We Thrive, talk us through a little bit some of the people that have done and how you can feel and see them coming out the other end, and that their career pathway becomes that bit easier.
Absolutely. So there's two areas that We Thrive work on, and one could be for a highly skilled person who just needs support around confidence building and able to actually build out communication skills on that side. So I've seen two people actually thrive through this opportunity and actually be able to re-engage with their workplace through this element. Another area is that I've built a trauma-informed workshop which starts and is in partnership with DWP. And that's also with Women's Aid and Refuge, which is a 7-week program which enables them to build their CVs, to build out their LinkedIn profiles, but also to be able to work with smart works where they're able to build a capsule wardrobe. We also look at things like reading pay slips, how to work on a budget, also look at employment law. And then we have a couple of weeks where we've got Dr. Genevieve coming in to discuss confidence building. And then we have an employer come in, to a large employers come in and look at the vast range of roles that they've actually got, and they're able to actually be fast tracked through into an employment where they have a buddy, and they're able to then sort of come in and have someone they can work with on a day-to-day basis, but also a mentor to help them build their lives and career paths moving forward.
And is there anything you think that could be done around industry networks and mentoring?
So, I mean, we're always at We Thrive looking for people to come forward on a personal note to look at building and mentoring programs that they're able to actually build. But we have a trauma-informed workshop that we build internally for clients like Markel that we're working with to bring people on, so that when people do come forward and say that they're going through domestic abuse, you're trauma-informed enough to be able to help that person through that area.
And do you feel, I mean, I know the insurance industry is an area where you work for a long time. Do you feel that the insurance industry is going a decent journey on this journey, or more work to do?
There's, at last, we're actually being heard, and at last we're actually got events that dive in that's moving forward. It's been a slow journey and there's a long way to go, but luckily people like Markel, Allied World, and AXA have really sort of pushed forwards and making ripples in the market at last. So
no, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So we're going to come to questions quite shortly, but just while you're all thinking about your questions and putting them into the Slido, just one last one. If there could be if we could implement one key change across the industry right now, today, that would help people impacted by domestic abuse, what would it be? And I'm going to come to Samantha first, because and you don't have to just talk about insurance, because obviously you're not an insurance, well, I mean, but unless you wish to, but just generally across the workplace, what needs to be done?
I think we need to recognise that we've got perpetrators in the workplace, that this isn't just about the victims.
What would you, just interested me, what would you do about that? So it's a very interesting statement.
Well, because, you know, in the strategy in the new Employment Rights Bill, the FCA are actually doing a fantastic thing around this, around bringing it into misconduct rules. But generally, there's this idea that nobody knows a perpetrator, that they don't work in big industry, that they, you know, they're all, I don't know, council house living dolights, and that is wrong. And if the financial sector in any part of the globe is going to build trust. Not unlike the police, you have to sort your own houses out first and get rid of your perpetrators. So I'd, you know, for there not to be excuses made and said, oh, well, you know, they're a partner, you know, they bring us in some money, or to kick them out of your company so that you don't have the risk, but you just kick the can down the road somewhere else. You know, it's just as important that, yes, the support of victims, but I think we need to move into the perpetrator space.
It's very interesting. Jo, what's the one thing that you think needs to happen right now?
Sarah is exactly right. We need to be talking about it. We need to start the conversations. We need to raise awareness. You know, I think you were a little gracious to the insurance industry in saying it is something that we are ahead of. We're really not. It's not a topic that we are talking about. And so, you know, my plea to HR colleagues out there is think about it. You know, I'm offering, and there's some talented people of our HR team in the audience who have thought about this. I'm saying, you know, we are happy to share what we've done. Talk to AIDA. Amazing, absolutely brilliant partnership, and we can't thank you enough for what you did to help get us going, because the resource is there. So just talk about it. I know it feels sensitive and uncomfortable, and gosh, for those of us that don't have lived experiences, you think, where do you start? Start there.
And I might be straying slightly outside of my lane here, but I mean, this is a time in our history where there is a big pushback against diversity and inclusion and projects such as this. And I guess it's the time where people truly mean it need to step up. I think. Oh, and you had something so good to say as well. There you go. Oh no, do you want my one?
This is not a diversity and inclusion initiative at all. This is a fundamental leadership performance business issue. In the insurance sector, like everywhere else, people is your only asset at the end of the day. If you don't have great people performing at their best, you are nothing. And this absolutely goes to people's ability to perform at work. So it is diversity and inclusion, massively important. And thinking about diversity and inclusion in the way that you put your response in place is really important. But I would just say this is an absolute fundamental core business issue. It's not a nice to have thing on the edge of anything. It is absolutely core. That was my view when I brought it in at my former law firm. That is why I left as a partner of a law firm to take on a job doing this, because I feel about it so strongly. And our mission is for every organisation across the country to have a good workplace response. So my one thing I would like across the insurance industry is, I completely agree with Sam about perpetrators. However, I would like every insurance industry sector organisation to have the basics, which is a good workplace response with a policy, written guidance, stuff in place to help everybody to recognise, respond, refer. So some base level stuff. Everybody needs to have that. It's in your own interests.
And Sarah, your work is truly innovative in terms of supporting people with this experience. What's the one thing you want?
I would like to mirror what Susan says, is about basically signing up to AIDA, but also working with We Thrive. There's a consultancy element that we've started up with Sam and Catherine, which is about how to embed those policies to give the support around that. And also working with We Thrive on the coaching side, you're actually supporting and saving costs around the area of the coaching, because anybody on performance review, you could be losing that talent and again that data. So to mitigate that risk, it really is important to sort of move forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, and now it's time for the questions. So Jess is going to come up and here we go. Sit there.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jess Hardy. I lead on inclusion and belonging at ACTS UK, and we've been on our journey around supporting victim survivors of domestic abuse since 2022. So it's a real great pleasure to be here and support this event today. Thank you so much for putting your questions into Slido. I really appreciate that it can be a difficult subject for some people, so thank you. Just there so I can actually read what I'm saying. So I'm going to come to you first, Sam, if that's okay. So how does the need to remain invisible for safety reasons after a domestic abuse situation affect building a professional profile? I know you've spoken about your career and how it sadly ended, but do you have any builds on that? What can we do in an organisation to support this?
Well, it's I mean, even like the safety of LinkedIn, I discovered LinkedIn. It wasn't, the normal social media for my career. But what he has done is got junior staff to stalk me on LinkedIn. So that starts to impact. I don't post anywhere near as much because I know that he's watching that. So that's impacting me now directly in this new career. I think this is when it comes back to looking at perpetrators in your employ. A perpetrator generally is going to work for somebody, and to have it in your policies that this kind of behaviour, it's under the Harassment Act. It's not sexual harassment, but it's still harassment. And somebody else might sort of say, oh, that's, she's just got a few juniors looking at her LinkedIn posts on a Friday night and a bank holiday. Not for me. I know what he's doing. I know he's got eyes. It's a message being sent. And so I think that is an area where you can look at your policy, yes, for your victims, but actually start looking at your policies. And again, I think it being consistent and everybody getting together and being on the same page would be really helpful for everybody, including you, to start including perpetrators in that conversation and in those policies. Government aren't going to do it for us. We've got to do it ourselves.
And I think absolutely right. And I think it's not just about your domestic abuse policies, about what about your other employment policies? How are they complementing it? So your social media policy, for example, there is a great example.
But basically, it's general safeguarding. We silo domestic abuse off into this kind of box somewhere that's like a bit of a nice thing to have. It's not, like I say, it's a business imperative. It's a safeguarding imperative. It's a cost to you, a risk to your reputation, your own people. Somebody who's abusing at home isn't going to be Mr. Nice Guy in the workplace. There'll be somebody that he's doing it to in the workplace. It might be the cleaner, it might be the office boy or girl, but they'll be doing something. You just can't see it yet because you're not recognizing it. You're not looking for it in your own space. I made that mistake. Don't make the same one I did. You'll pay.
Thank you. I'm going to come to you next, Susan, if that's okay. We've got a question here, and there's a few questions around sort of like starting that disclosure process and how managers to respond. So the question is, my job is to advise managers. What advice can we give for the tough but necessary moment you feel you need to raise a domestic abuse conversation with someone, both victim and perpetrator?
So I think it's a thing. I think it's the preparation first, if you see what I mean. It's having stuff in place so that it is easier to have those conversations. So one of the things I'm very keen on is for organisations to embed what they're doing in their processes rather than having a sort of one-off campaign that everyone forgets about. So just to give some examples, you may or may not know that domestic abuse can often start during a period of pregnancy, maternity leave, or can escalate during those times. And that's just one example. So putting into return to work conversations, if you've got a standard list of questions that you might ask, one might be, is everything okay at home? Having that in an annual review process. So you have lots of, well, certainly we used to have lots of boxes and lots of questions, but having something, a well-being type question, is everything okay at home? Embedding that in so that those conversations are more normalized rather than sort of thinking you have to have the conversation. But I would say if you are concerned about somebody, either being you're worried about whether they might be experiencing domestic abuse or might be abusing, it's really important to have asked the question. I cannot tell you how many people have said, people must have known, but they never asked me if I was okay. Colleagues noticed things, but they never asked me if I was okay. Or asking once, and the automatic reaction from a victim survivor is to say, I'm fine. It's like a child coming home from school. How was your day? It's all fine. Ask again. If you're worried, ask again. And over time, you'll build up trust, and eventually somebody will talk to you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yep. It's like you knew. So Sarah, a question for you here. What were the initial obstacles faced when initiatives like We Thrive were first introduced to the insurance industry?
I think it was just awareness and being open, but I was extremely lucky to have support from the likes of Allied World, Markel and Ida really to push forward, and AXA was able to sort of really bring me on board and enable me to openly have these conversations. And I think when looking at survivors, it's not that we're damaged goods, we're actually quite imperative to the workforce. And I think when people started to look at that side of things, like the resilience that we can actually build, the ability to be change, and also the loyalty that we give, I think that really shows what a strength that we have and the imperative to build a stronger workforce.
Absolutely. And Joe, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay. So the question here is, colleagues may want to be supportive, but not sure what to say or how to help. How can colleagues be supported to help and support in these situations?
So I think it's then about offering different levels of training and education. So having that all employee awareness training, not for it to be very long. Ours is 1 hour, so enough that people have awareness and then know where to signpost to the resources. It then needs to be slightly more involved for managers, and then even more involved for HR. We did 2 half days for HR, because actually they're the people that we're thinking will really be the partners and create that tailored plan. So where that is offered by companies or general training, do sign up just so that you have that awareness. But yeah, it's not just your tailored framework, it's the tailored training to make sure that at least everybody has some understanding, but then also knows, gosh, I'm not expected to be an expert here. This is where you go, but showing enough of the understanding and empathy to say, I hear you, let me refer you to somebody who can really help.
Thank you. And Joe, if we could just stick with you for one more question. What one thing can financial services organisations learn from events like COVID when domestic abuse was so high?
Gosh, what a question. Well, but I think it was a moment for all of us. We heard about the increase in domestic abuse situations, the same with mental health. I think for all of us, it was we have to do better, and figuring out what that balance is on whether it's how much time we spend in the office or not, or how we respond. But Susan, honestly, you probably, this is probably something that you've got far more in-depth knowledge on.
Not necessarily, but what I would say is, number one, if you have physical premises, keep them open. That was my big learning in COVID. So I was still managing partner of my law firm. And in that first period of COVID, like most organisations, we followed government guidance and we closed our office for about 3 months. It was wonderful in achieving my desire I had in my business plan. Number one thing was get flexible working, more consistent across our business. Well, we achieved that in a week. That was wonderful. However, what I learned was work can be somebody's only safe space. And that might be because of domestic abuse. It might be for mental well-being, all sorts of different reasons why people might need not to be at home and to have the ability to go somewhere. So that's the thing I would say. Keep your office spaces only, and think about the fact, I think hybrid working, people being able to work from home is wonderful. I so wish I'd been able to do that earlier in my career. However, it can be dangerous, and look out for people who are working from home all the time. Then maybe you may need to find a way to get them into a physical workspace if you're worried about them. If somebody's not turning their cameras on, is there something going on? Be very attuned to that. It's much harder to spot that there might be something going on when you're dealing through a screen. Whereas when you've got somebody in front of you, it can be easier to spot that something's not right. So think about physical spaces.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. So I think we've got time for one last question. I'm just gonna go down the line, but we'll start with Sam. So, if employers haven't done anything in this space, what is your one recommendation for getting started?
Just get going. It's scary. It's, slightly butt cheeky or whatever, but just do it and speak to lived experience. We're here to help you. We don't want what happened to us to happen to anybody else. And there's an army of us. So we're here for you. Do that and we'll help you all the way.
That is exactly right, because that was, when I was talking about our aha moment at the beginning of last year, it was the fact that we were hearing people's stories and just realizing how utterly pervasive and life-changing it was. And you just cannot listen to some of the stories and not act.
Can I just say, it's not just the stories though. We know how perpetrators work. We know their methodology, we know their patterns, we know where to put the fire breaks in. We know them inside out, and we can help you to do that in your policy, in your systems, to keep your business really good and to meet actually your statutory requirements, especially the ones that are about to come in. So, we really are of value. It's been really hard, but knowing I knew my worth and my value before, and he took that. My worth and my value is different now, but I've remembered that I have worth and value, and you can help people do that too.
And the one practical thing is go to the HEDA website, pick up the phone. That is your best entryway into finding out what to do next.
And I echo that very much, actually, and also to engage with We Thrive, who could help work with you to embed the policies from IDA with Catherine Benwell and Sam as well, which is survivors-led policy implementation.
So I know it's my organisation, but do join IDA. Do access our handbook. That is the step-by-step guide. It's totally informed by our ambassadors, people with experience, by other businesses. It shares ideas and so on. And it is a step-by-step guide. So start with that. And we can introduce you to other organisations, people who can help you. One step at a time, but please take that one step.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much for being so open. We really appreciate it.